Before transmigrating into the book, I was flipping through starry novels and read a tragic story about a fake young master. The male lead was a total loser, misunderstood, framed, unloved by his granny, ignored by his father, even had a kidney donated and ended up a scapegoat. It was like he'd offended the heavens. The more miserable, the better. Does being mouthless mean you also lack hands and feet? It made me furious. Ugh, I was stupid enough to finish reading it. I jumped out of bed in the middle of the night and practiced a full set of combat moves, finished and called it a day. Suddenly a wave of dizziness hit me. My brain felt like something huge had been shoved into it. I almost couldn't stand. Once clear-headed, I realized, damn, I'd transmigrated into the book. I had become the novel's pathetic male lead, Ethan. A mechanical voice suddenly echoed in my head. You yap too much. If you're so capable, then go ahead and change the male lead's fate. I tapped my head. Can I kill the male lead's whole family? The mechanical voice replied, no, novels aren't beyond the law. Everyone must abide by the baseline of legality. Even a melodramatic novel cares about the law. I recalled the book's plot. Ethan's tragic life was so rich that it could have filled a whole book called Misery. He was switched at birth by the driver Arthur, who passed his own son Lucas off to live as the pampered heir of a wealthy family, while Ethan was sold to the western wastes. By day, he herded sheep and planted watermelons. By night, he sneaked study by moonlight, and when discovered, he'd be hung up and beaten viciously by his adoptive parents. After finally finishing basic schooling, when the Johnson family discovered the baby had been swapped years ago, they brought Ethan back. We thought coming back would mean a better life, but it was just misery in a new place. When the Johnsons saw Ethan with his rustic western wastes manner, disappointment was written all over their faces. The wealthy family's affection didn't extend to Ethan at all. They favored the aristocratic-looking adopted son Lucas and ignored their own child. So Lucas escalated, repeatedly framing and slandering Ethan for the fun of it. Father George and Mother Margaret believed Lucas's slanders without question. Ethan tried to escape his fate by improving himself, only to make his parents notice, but they remained indifferent. In the end, Ethan was filled with despair and attempted suicide again and again. Truly the most pathetic of the pathetic. He was too cowardly even to finish the job and failed so many times. I cursed inwardly. What a damned coward. If you want to die, you might as well stab Lucas. One life for one life, ending the Johnson line right there. I got out of the bathtub and tossed the knife into the trash can. Just then the door was suddenly shoved open. I walked out of the bathroom and came face to face with that fair, handsome face, and soon matched it up with a cruel face in my memory. The usurping fake young Master Lucas. He swaggered over, arrogantly thrusting a $50 bill into my hand as if bestowing charity. Ethan, Mom and Dad said it's the same as always for this exam. You still write my name. Consider this your tip. Although the original wasn't well educated, he was naturally bright, and after returning to the Johnson family, he worked hard to gain his parents' attention, so his studies were always decent. Lucas, on the other hand, had always enjoyed the top-tier education of a wealthy family, but he never focused on academic subjects, so his grades were far worse than Ethan's. The first time Ethan made the top 10 in a grade, he brought his report card to his parents, expecting them to be especially pleased and pay him extra attention. Instead, Lucas staged a drama about running away from home, claiming his grades were so poor he didn't deserve to stay in the Johnson family as a young master. He had enjoyed high-quality education for so many years, but still couldn't measure up to Ethan, who had just returned, a disgrace to the Johnson family. Their parents panicked, stopped Lucas, and publicly accused Ethan of deliberately flaunting the report card in front of Lucas with bad intentions. From then on, his parents demanded that Ethan swap names on test papers with Lucas after every exam, claiming it was to establish a good social image for the Johnson family and craft the perfect wealthy persona. Cowed and meek, Ethan had no choice but to accept reality and obey his parents. I snapped out of my memories, snorted coldly, and opened that $50 bill. The bill was tattered. Who knew where he'd gotten such a ragged note that even a beggar would shake his head at. It even had disgusting, indeterminate stains on it. Lucas grinned proudly. "Sorry, Ethan, I really don't have any other cash. I usually use cards, so this is all I've got on me. Just take it for now." His smug smile hadn't faded when I heard a ripping sound. The bill was torn in half in my hand. "You?" "Ugh." Before he could finish, I crumpled the bill into a wad and shoved it into his mouth, clamping a hand on the back of his neck to force him to tilt his head back and swallow. $50 to buy a top 10 grade? "Lucas, your accounting is so pathetic the sheep I heard it on the western waste heard it." Lucas turned beet red from choking on the bill, coughing violently to spit it out, but I kept my hand clamped over his mouth. I released him and watched coldly as he knelt and gagged, trying to expel the paper wad. He hadn't expected me to fight back. His gaze turned vicious as he stared at me. You dare cough? I lifted the corner of my mouth in a satisfied smile, enjoying the feeling. All the anger I'd built up from reading novels was finally being released. I put my foot lightly on his back and, with a little more force, pushed him face down onto the floor until his face met the ground. "What, you? Who the hell told you to speak?" He struggled to get up, but I pressed him so he couldn't move. "Ethan, let me go." "Do you want me to tell Mom and Dad?" He roared, his speech slurred from having had the paper shoved in his mouth. I increased the pressure under my foot. "Cut the crap. First spit out my $50. After all, you gave it to me," I said, then tidied my clothes, removed my foot from his back, cracked my neck, and walked out the door. As I left the room, Lucas's gut-wrenching coughs and curses followed me, making my head ache, so I reluctantly shut the door behind me. After all, he's a biological son, yet he looks like he's malnourished. I shook my head at the frail body in the mirror. Ethan has been back a year. He probably hasn't had more than a few full meals. His face is pale, his wrists as thin as splinters. No, can't lose the capital for revolution. Ignoring the housekeeper Martha's surprised look as she arranged flowers in the living room, I casually grabbed a bottle of some top-tier red wine from the cabinet, pulled out the cork, and took a few swigs straight from the bottle. The rich, silky wine slid down with strong fruit notes and oak. The wealthy family does drink well. Martha went pale, a trace of contempt and panic in her eyes. "Mr. Ethan, that's Mr. George's prize bottle. What?" "I drink my own family's wine and need to report to you." I shook the bottle. "Or has this house already come under your rule?" Martha was instantly at a loss for words and dared not speak. I went into the kitchen on my own, rummaged through the fridge, took out some premium ingredients, and made myself a simple lunch. Then, in front of Martha, devoured a large steak, sides and eggs, as if a storm had swept them clean. The long-missed feeling of fullness filled my stomach. I sighed with contentment. Setting down the cutlery, I just happened to see Lucas storming downstairs with a dark face. When he saw me, he opened his mouth as if to say something, glanced toward the front door with the corner of his eye. A flash of determination crossed his face. Then right in front of me, he flung himself flat and began screaming and wailing as if the world were ending. George and Margaret, who had just come in, saw Lucas in this pitiable state as soon as they entered. Margaret's face drained when she saw her precious son like this. She dropped her bag and hurried to embrace him. "Lucas, what happened? Did you fall badly? Are you hurt? Tell Mom." George rushed forward nervously, checking Lucas for injuries. "Are you okay, Lucas? How did you fall? Don't let anything serious happen." Lucas clutched his neck, tear streaks on his face, and still looking sick from retching. "Dad, Mom, you have to stand up for me." He wiped his eyes, gave me a hypocritical look. Today I thought I'd reconnect with Ethan, worried he might not have enough living money. So I took $50 to give him. I just didn't expect he would suddenly hit me and push me down the stairs. Martha, seeing this, quickly slipped into the kitchen. The more Lucas spoke, the more distraught he became. His tears fell like a dam burst. I just wanted to be nicer to Ethan. I don't know why he would do this to me. Maybe he thought $50 was too little, felt that me, an adopted son of the Johnsons, using my money would dirty his status. "I'm sorry, Mom, Dad. It's all my fault." George's head snapped up, his gaze like a knife slicing toward me. a vein bulging at his temple. "Ethan, you damn blot on the family. How could the Johnsons give birth to someone as vicious as you?" Margaret, holding a sobbing Lucas, looked at me with eyes as cold as ice, full of disappointment and disgust. "You've only been back a short time, and you've already made the household miserable. If we'd known you were like this, we should never have taken you back. If Lucas ends up seriously hurt, you'll get out and go back to the western wastelands immediately." I stood in the dining room doorway, leisurely wiped the corner of my mouth with a napkin, and watched this whole farce calmly. The mechanical voice in my head sounded again, with a hint of schadenfreude. "See, the power of plot is strong." I sneered inwardly and spoke deliberately. He was so disgusting when he talked, I couldn't help hitting him. But I didn't push him down the stairs. He's framing me. If I did it, I'll admit it. If I didn't, don't try to pin it on me. "Ethan," George was about to breathe fire. "You actually dare to make excuses?" His roar echoed through the spacious living room, making the crystal chandelier tremble slightly. Margaret's gaze toward me grew even colder, as if she was looking at a hopeless stranger. Lucas sobbed harder in her arms, his shoulders heaving, an Oscar-worthy performance. Lucas gripped both George and Margaret. "Mom, Dad, don't be mad anymore. Ethan didn't mean it. I'm fine, aren't I?" And Ethan went easy on him. "At least he didn't kill him. He's alive and well." Saying that, he wiped his eyes again. I ignored George's fury and Margaret's icy stare and walked straight toward Lucas, who was still shivering on the floor. My steps were steady, a hint of amusement playing on my face. That unnatural calm froze George and Margaret for a moment. Even Lucas's crying paused involuntarily. "W, what do you want to do?" Panic flashed in Lucas's eyes as he instinctively shrank back and clung to Margaret. George reacted, stepping forward to block me and shouting, "Stop! Do you really plan to attack someone in front of us?" I halted, tilted my head, looked at Lucas, and said evenly, "Attack? Dad, you're using strong words. I just want to confirm how badly my dear brother fell." I emphasized the word fell. After all, tumbling down the stairs isn't trivial. At best, bruises and scrapes. At worst, broken bones, a concussion, even paralysis. My gaze swept over Lucas's obviously intact limbs and the quickness in his eyes. "If anything happens to Lucas, I'll flay you alive." Margaret shrieked, pulling Lucas tighter. "Mom, I'm fine. It's just my arms and legs hurt, and my head's a little dizzy." Lucas immediately moaned weakly, his acting spot on. I smiled. The sound cut oddly through the tense air. "Dizzy? Arms and legs hurt? Then you really need a proper check." I twisted my neck calmly, grabbed the so-called brother's cheek with one hand, and slammed his head down hard onto the floor. I struck suddenly, so fast no one could react. His occiput hit the living room's smooth, hard marble floor solidly and viciously. Thud, a dull sound that made you wince. Lucas didn't have time to scream. He passed out instantly. "You shouldn't feel any pain now, right?" The world seemed paused. George and Margaret stood frozen, hands suspended midair, staring at the scene in disbelief. Margaret was the first to recover, throwing herself beside Lucas. "Lucas! Lucas, are you okay? Don't scare Mommy." George, eyes bloodshot, rushed over to slap me. Luckily, I was ready and easily dodged his swinging hand. George's slap missed. His body staggered from using too much force. He pointed at my nose, trembling with rage, his voice changing pitch. "Rebellious. This is an outrage. You beast. How dare you? How dare you use such foul means?" Margaret held the unconscious Lucas, crying her heart out. "Call the police. Quickly call the police. Arrest this murderer," she cried and shouted while frantically checking Lucas's breathing. The corner of my mouth twitched up slightly. "Mom, Dad, if you don't take your precious adopted son to the hospital immediately, even if he doesn't die, he's probably going to be brain damaged." George was snapped back to reality by my words. Seeing the bit of blood seeping from the back of Lucas's head and his completely unconscious state, his face went pale in an instant. He had no time left to scold me and shouted in a panic, "Arthur, ready the car. Hurry, ready the car. To the hospital." The driver Arthur rushed in at the sound, stunned by the scene, and together with George, clumsily lifted Lucas and carried him out. Margaret followed, wailing and despairing. Before leaving, she glanced back at me with eyes as poisonous as a dagger. Lucas was taken to the hospital in time and wasn't in life-threatening condition, but there's a small patch at the back of his head that might never grow hair again. That little bald spot was worse than death for Lucas, who cares about his looks and has always presented himself as the perfect, noble gentleman. The Johnsons value face and dared not make a scene, so outside they said Lucas had accidentally fallen down the stairs. But Lucas couldn't swallow that humiliation. On my first day back at school, a bunch of thugs cornered me in the bathroom. The leader, Jake, swaggered, cigarette pinched between his fingers, and pointed at me. "Fuck, didn't I warn you? Don't mess with Lucas. Are you fucking stupid? Do you think I don't see you?" Then he swung a punch in my face. I leaned aside to dodge. Jake overcommit, stumbled, and crashed into a stall. I grabbed his shoulder, kicked his leg, and using his momentum pulled him while kicking his knee hard. With a thud, he dropped to his knees in front of the squat toilet, nearly banging his head on the ceramic rim, utterly humiliated. I grabbed his neck and shoved him toward the hole. "You said I didn't notice you. Notice me now, happy." The sharp smell of disinfectant mixed with some indescribable stench hit his nostrils. He struggled, flailing his arms, making choking, terrified noises. The other lackeys were stunned. They probably never imagined that this usually meek, bullyable heir of the Johnsons could be so ruthless, so vicious. It was like he had become a different person. "Damn it, let Jake go." One hothead reacted first, shouting as he lunged to grab me from behind. I didn't even turn. I lifted my heel and accurately kicked the shin bone. "Aya!" He screamed, clutching his leg and collapsing to the floor, gasping for breath from the pain. That quieted the rest. They exchanged glances and didn't dare advance. I increased the pressure. Jake's face was almost touching the squat toilet water. Terrified, he mumbled a plea. Let go. I was wrong. Mr. Ethan, I'm sorry." I released him and gave him a kick. Jake flopped over the squat toilet and dared not move. I casually pulled a cigarette and lighter from his pocket, lit one for myself with satisfaction, and glanced at the thugs who stood frozen. None of them dared to make a sound. I blew out a smoke ring. The haze curled in the dim bathroom light. Jesus, smoking such good shit at school. What? Are you planning to smoke cigars when you graduate? I weighed the cigarette pack in my hand, pocketed it, and glanced at Jake, still retching on the floor, and at the cowed followers. "I'm confiscating the smokes. Students should focus on school, not smoking." With the cigarette pinched between my fingers, I jabbed each of them, and instinctively they all took half a step back, eyes sliding away, no one daring to speak. Scram. I waved my hand as if shooing flies. They accepted the unspoken pardon like a reprieve, fumbled to help Jake and the other moaning kid to their feet, and staggered out of the bathroom without daring to look back. "Christ, that's freaky," one of the thugs muttered under his breath. I stubbed out my cigarette in the sink, straightened my clothes that had been messed up in the scuffle, and walked out of the bathroom calmly. Lucas wasn't badly hurt. The bandage wrapped around his head made him especially noticeable. When I returned to the classroom, I happened to see him sitting in his seat, surrounded by a ring of people, chatting about something. At the sight of me entering, everyone immediately stopped talking and looked over. "Ethan," a cold female voice cut through the crowd. I glanced that way and met a pair of icy eyes. A sting of pain traveled through me instinctively. It was Chloe, the original body's fiancée, though only in name. Although the original had been deeply in love with her, Chloe herself had a soft spot for Lucas. No matter what Lucas said, she believed him unquestioningly and had done as much damage to the original as anyone. She was standing beside Lucas's desk now, looking at me with undisguised loathing. "You thief, and you have the nerve to come back." Her voice was low but loud enough for the whole class to hear. "Hurry up and give back the $20,000 of class funds you stole." $20,000 in class funds? I raised an eyebrow and stood still. It seemed Lucas could have a cracked skull and still carry on his schemes. What class funds? I asked calmly. Don't play dumb. Chloe stepped forward, contempt filling her pretty almond-shaped eyes. You were the only one who left the classroom last this afternoon. The $20,000 in cash that Lucas put away was in the drawer of the teacher's desk. If you didn't take it, who else could it be? At that moment, Lucas forged a weak, hurt expression and tugged at Chloe's sleeve. Chloe, don't be like this. Maybe Ethan was just confused or had an urgent need. His words sounded conciliatory, but in reality sealed my guilt. The looks from the other students turned sharp and disdainful. Whispers rose. Of course. He came back from the Western Wasteland. His hands aren't clean. He always looks gloomy. Clearly not a good person. 20,000. That's enough for a case, right? I snorted and swept my gaze over Lucas's feigned magnanimous face before settling on Chloe. Lucas told you, didn't he? So you didn't even check the surveillance. You just pinned the theft on me. Hearing me, Chloe's expression changed abruptly. No need to check the cameras. Lucas never lies, and it's not the first time your hands have been dirty. I advise you to hand the money over honestly. We're classmates. Let's let bygones be bygones. Or else it won't be so easy to smooth things over later. No sooner had she finished than she reached out to search me. I snorted and, with a turn, pinned Chloe beneath me. Miss Chloe, although we're engaged, it's not very appropriate for you to be this intimate with me in public, is it? Chloe froze, her face flushing a deep red as she glared at me in disgust. What are you talking about? I'm not interested in you at all. I just want the class funds. Is that so? I glanced at the summer school uniform I was wearing. Then tell me, do I look like I could hide $20,000 in class funds on me? I think you're just refusing to check the footage and trying to find an excuse to get close to me. Pinned to the desk and hearing my words, Chloe trembled with fury, her cheeks so red they seemed to bleed, while the classmates around us stifled gasps and whispered, Ethan, let me go. Who wants to get close to you? Don't flatter yourself. She struggled, but awkwardly positioned. She couldn't leverage any strength. All right, Ethan. Lucas clutched his head, his voice weak. I saw you take the money with my own eyes. Just give it back, and we can pretend this never happened. There's really no need to go check the cameras. His words sounded harsh, and everything about him annoyed me. I lifted my foot and kicked him flat to the ground. Much better. Lucas hadn't expected me to hit him in front of everyone. Half angry, half panicked, his eyes reddened. The classroom fell silent instantly. Everyone stared in shock, unbelieving. Chloe stopped, struggling, her mouth dropping open in astonishment. Ethan, are you crazy? She finally reacted, shrieking. You not only stole money, you hit someone? I released my grip on her hand, stood up slowly, and dusted off my school uniform that had no dust on it. Hit him. I'm just teaching him a lesson. I looked down coldly at the grimacing Lucas on the floor. Falsely accusing someone without evidence has consequences. Evidence? I am the evidence. Lucas clutched his stomach, his face ashen, but his gaze more venomous. I saw it with my own eyes. What did you see? I stepped closer and looked down at him. Saw me open the podium drawer? Saw me take the money from it? What time exactly? What was I wearing? Was it my left hand or right hand? I fired off a series of questions quickly and clearly. Lucas was stunned and his eyes flickered. Obviously, he hadn't thought through such details. I just came back to grab something and saw you sneaking around the podium. Then the drawer opened and the money was gone. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Oh, you came back to get something? I picked up the clue in his words. What were you getting? What did you come back? Did anyone else see you? Lucas was at a loss for words, sweat beading at his temple. Chloe saw this and immediately stepped in front of him, glaring at me. Ethan, don't change the subject. Lucas is hurt like this. He wouldn't lie. It was definitely you. Chloe, I looked at her, my tone calm, but carrying an unmistakable pressure. If your brain is just for decoration, I wouldn't mind helping you find another place to put it. Now, either we check the footage right away to see who is lying, or I will personally invite you to check the footage. My gaze swept Lucas and Chloe, then landed on the camera in the corner of the classroom. And for the record, slander and false accusation carry legal consequences. $20,000 is enough to file a case. Chloe shook with anger at my blunt words, but when she heard legal consequences, a flicker of hesitation finally crossed her eyes. Lucas looked even worse. He forced himself to stand and suddenly softened, his voice breaking. Ethan, maybe I was mistaken. I was feeling really dizzy then. Maybe I remembered wrong. As soon as he said that, the expressions of the other students shifted. Those who had been indignant a moment ago now looked doubtful. Mistaken, I sneered. $20,000 in class funds is missing. That's a fact. It doesn't get fixed because you misremembered. We have to check the cameras. I stood firm, refusing to back down. Chloe looked at Lucas's guilty face and then at my determined expression and finally bit her lip. Fine, check it. I don't believe it could be anyone else, she said and hurried toward the classroom door, clearly going to find the homeroom teacher, Emily, or to go straight to the monitor room. Lucas tried to grab her, but didn't make it. His face went as white as paper in an instant, his fingers trembling slightly. I leisurely leaned against my desk, enjoying the guilty look on his face. Not long after, homeroom teacher Emily returned with Chloe, her face stern, holding a phone that was playing a surveillance video. Everyone's eyes focused on them. Emily walked to the podium, glanced at me with a complex look, then at Lucas. The class fund has been found. All right, everyone disperse. Emily's words hit the room like a stone dropped into a calm lake, sending ripples through the crowd. Classmates exchanged looks, confusion and curiosity written all over their faces. Found? What was it found? Chloe's expression was terrible. She bit her lip hard, avoided looking at anyone, especially Lucas. Lucas, as if sensing something, went paler than before and looked like he could hardly stand, instinctively stepping back half a pace. Emily took a deep breath. Maybe Lucas took it himself and misremembered, not wanting to offend the Johnson family. This homeroom teacher, Emily, was prepared to downplay the matter, as if that were acceptable. I would teach him the ways of the world. I calmly smoothed my clothes, smiled, and strode to the podium, looking down at Lucas from above. $20,000. That's not a small sum. Who would have thought that the thief who stole the money would dare to turn it around and frame an innocent person? Such malicious intent. A thief is a thief. The son of a driver. Stealing the Johnson family's identity isn't enough. Now he steals the class fund too. Is the Johnson family's allowance for you insufficient? The Johnsons give you $100,000 a month for living expenses. What are you talking about? Lucas's face went ashen, panic written all over him as he stared at me. For the sake of the Johnson family's reputation, Lucas's identity had never been made public. The story always told outsiders was that the Johnsons had two sons. I was the eldest, raised in the Western Wasteland, and Lucas was the younger child raised beside them. With George and Margaret's favoritism, to outsiders Lucas appeared to be the truly beloved young master of the Johnson family. As soon as I said those words, the classroom erupted in whispers. Ethan means Lucas isn't biologically a Johnson. Lucas is the driver's son, and Ethan is the real young master of the Johnson family? No wonder Lucas stole the class fund. He isn't a blood son. Disgusting that he would dare to slander the real young master of the Johnson family. The whole Johnson family belongs to him. How could he be bothered by $20,000? The murmurs surged like tidewater, countless eyes flicking between Lucas and me, full of suspicion, surprise, and a hint of contempt for being exposed. Lucas's face flushed red, then quickly drained pale. He scrambled to defend himself. His voice, thin with panic, sounded sharp. Ethan, you're talking nonsense. We're brothers. Why would you slander me like this? Oh, I slander you? Then tell me, why did you frame me when you took the money? Lucas seemed strangled, words of defense stuck in his throat, leaving only heavy gasps and a body shaking violently. Homeroom teacher Emily had sweat on his forehead, standing awkwardly, unsure how to resolve things. The situation had completely slipped out of his control, and he tried to smooth things over. "Classmate Ethan, these are family matters. There's no need to." At that moment, Chloe spoke up, actually about today's class fund. Lucas just wanted to joke with his brother Ethan. Didn't expect he couldn't take a joke. He got all worked up, so now it's turned into something no one can easily untangle. I couldn't help but laugh. Of all times, Chloe still stepped in to defend him. True love indeed. Then I said calmly, "If it was a joke, Lucas should hand the money back now. If this continues, it really becomes theft." Chloe's face immediately went extremely ugly. She obviously hadn't expected me to follow her lead and turn the accusation back on Lucas. She opened her mouth to retort, but couldn't find the right words. Lucas shot me a vicious look, then took the $20,000 out of my backpack. The air in the whole classroom seemed to freeze. His movements were deliberately slow, trying to create the pretense of, "I'm just going along with a clumsy joke," but the tremor in his fingertips and his pale face betrayed him. "Ethan, I didn't expect you to be so thin-skinned." He forced out a smile more pitiful than crying, his voice dry. "We, the proud Johnson family. How could we stoop to taking $20,000? Chloe quickly took the money and handed it to the homeroom teacher. After things settled, Chloe frowned deeply, furious. "Ethan, how could you treat your brother like that? Your family, at least apologize to Lucas." I snorted and laughed. "Apologize? In what capacity are you scolding me and telling me to apologize?" I leaned close to her ear and said in a low voice, "As a fiancé, others may not know Lucas's true status, but you sure do. If you keep pushing, I won't hesitate to make it known to the world that he's a fake young master. That his father is a driver, even a trafficker, and is now rotting in prison." Chloe froze at my words, trembling with rage. "The Bennett family and the Johnson family are old acquaintances. Our grandfathers arranged a childhood betrothal between me and Chloe, but it was originally to be Lucas. After the Bennett family learned the truth, they demanded the Johnsons switch the betrothal back to me. The Bennett patriarch, Benjamin Bennett, is a man of loyalty. Even if the Johnson patriarch died, he insisted on keeping the engagement. No matter George and Margaret's objections, they couldn't alter the Bennett family's demand, since the match was originally made with the Johnson patriarch's own grandson. What does an imposter matter? Chloe believed she and Lucas had been childhood sweethearts and were well matched. She didn't care whether Lucas was a biological Johnson. She blamed the original holder of the body for ruining her relationship with Lucas, and with Lucas's daily slanders and antics, her disgust for the original person only grew. The original, however, fell in love with her at first sight. At dismissal, Lucas passed by my seat, lowered his head, and hissed a menace. "I won't let this go. Just you wait." I looked up and smiled at him. "I won't go easy on you. Don't you dare disappoint me." Threaten me? He really thinks I scare easy? After school, the Johnson family villa. I had just walked in when a teacup shattered at my feet with a whoosh. "Neil!" George's thunderous roar made the living room vibrate. Margaret sat on the sofa, holding Lucas, whose forehead was still bandaged. She'd cried until her eyes were swollen and red, and she looked at me as if she wanted to tear me apart. "Ethan, you little monster, forcing your brother to apologize in front of everyone at school. You've embarrassed the Johnson family. How dare you treat Lucas like this?" George trembled with rage. Lucas immediately put on a dramatic act, sobbing weakly, "Dad, Mom, don't blame Ethan. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have joked with him. It's my bad. Listen, see how sensible Lucas is. Still defending you even now." Margaret hugged him tighter, then hissed at me. "You cold-blooded thing. Lucas is your brother. You cracked his head open and humiliated him at school. Do you have to drive him to death before you're satisfied?" I walked around the shards without expression, went and sat on the sofa opposite them, and even poured myself a glass of water. "Mom, Dad, do you understand the situation?" I sipped slowly. "Your precious adopted son stole the class funds and framed me. When it came out, what does that have to do with me? That doesn't mean you started it." George shouted irrationally. And family shame shouldn't be aired in public. Couldn't you have dealt with it privately? You had to make the whole school know. His tirade gave me a headache. I really wanted to cut their whole family down. I already disliked them from reading the novel, but then I thought if I got arrested and executed by the cops in the book, that would be trouble. Mother jumped in. As the older brother, you stole Lucas's fiancée. Lucas didn't hold it against you. You keep picking on Lucas and never show any deference to your younger brother. I set the glass down and tapped my fingertips lightly against the side of it. Finished? If you're done, I'm going back to my room to rest. I stood up, ignoring George's furious, "You stop right there," and Margaret's shrill curses, and walked straight for the stairs. Lucas hid in Margaret's arms, the corner of his mouth curling into a barely noticeable smug smile, his eyes full of provocation. Just as I stepped onto the first stair, George lunged over, trying to grab me, but I dodged him easily. He trembled with anger, pointing at me. "Ungrateful child. If you don't make things clear today and kneel to apologize to your brother, don't you dare go anywhere." Margaret put Lucas down and, in a high-pitched voice, joined in, "Yes. Kneel. Apologize to Lucas." Lucas offered a weak protest at the right moment. "Dad, Mom, forget it. I'm really fine." I glanced at George's veined, shaking hand, then met his furious gaze and suddenly smiled. "Dad, I don't mind exposing that Lucas stole class funds and that he's adopted. That way this perfect, outstanding eldest young master Lucas will become a joke in everyone else's eyes. So, are you still sure you want to talk to me like this?" My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly through the suddenly quiet living room. George's face went extremely ugly in an instant. Family shame mustn't be shared outside, and that was what they cared about most. You threaten us?" George lowered his voice, incredulous and furious. "You could put it that way. If you insist on twisting things, I won't hesitate to see it through." Ignoring their theatrical expressions, I turned and went upstairs. The moment I closed the door, the whole world fell silent. The next few days were peaceful. George and Margaret stopped picking fights, and Lucas behaved a lot better. He even went out of his way to avoid me. Thanks to the original owner, midterms were unusually easy for me. After the exam, I thought I could push into the top 3, but when the results were announced, I couldn't find my name in the top 10. Third place, Lucas. I searched in order, puzzled, and only found my name much further down. 489th place. Wow, Lucas is amazing. He actually got third this time. No wonder he's the perfect heir cultivated by the Johnson Group. Good-looking and well-educated. I heard his art skills are excellent too. In comparison, Ethan, the Johnson family's eldest, is such a loser, bad at studying and poor character. How can two people raised by the same family be so different? One outstanding and the other trash. Lucas stood not far away, surrounded by classmates congratulating him. His face wore a modest smile, but his eyes kept darting toward me provocatively. He even mouthed silently at me. "What if you don't cooperate? If I want something, I can get it." I smiled and stepped forward. "Lucas, congrats. Third place, well done." My voice wasn't loud, but amid the chorus praising Lucas it rang especially clear, and the scene fell silent. Lucas's smile brightened. "Ethan, you didn't do well again." "Huh? It's fine. Try harder next time." I smiled wider and slapped his shoulder with some force. "Yes, try harder next time. But Lucas, there are a few problems I want to ask you about. Could you help me clear them up?" Lucas's smile curled with a hint of condescension. "Ethan, of course. We're brothers. This is nothing. I'll explain them to you when we get home tonight." He looked smug and challenging, as if to say, "Is that it? What can you do against me? Why wait until tonight?" I grabbed him as he turned to leave. "Right now, everyone's here, so let them see how the third place guy thinks. Let them learn a bit." The classmates perked up at once and chimed in. "Yeah," Lucas explained. "Let us benefit from your glory." Lucas's expression shifted, but under everyone's watchful eyes, he had to grit his teeth and agree. "All right, which question?" I took the test paper from my bag and flipped to the last major math problem. An extremely difficult question that only a handful of students in the whole school solved. That one, although I solved it, explaining will be a bit hard. I'll organize it and give you a full explanation later. Oh, can you at least outline the solution? I want to try solving it myself now. Lucas's smile froze. He hadn't worked out that problem at all. He hadn't even written anything. This problem is quite complex. It involved a lot of concepts and needs careful sorting. His eyes flickered as he tried to bluff his way through. Sweat beaded finely on Lucas's forehead. He opened his mouth, but couldn't form a single clear syllable. The surrounding classmates' expectant gazes gradually turned into confusion and scrutiny. You literally can't do it, right? I smiled, my voice low but loud enough for those nearby to hear. The area instantly fell quiet, all eyes focusing on Lucas. If you can't solve it, then I might start doubting that third-place ranking of yours, Lucas hurriedly said in a panic. This final problem is pretty hard. I need some time to recall the solving approach. After speaking, he even smiled at the classmates gathered around, then leaned close to my ear and hissed through his teeth. Ethan, you think this will make me look bad? I won't let you succeed. Your grades will always be mine. I will always be the best of the Johnson family, and you are just trash from the Western wastelands, always and forever worthless. Watching him force calm, I suddenly raised my voice to make sure everyone could hear. Lucas, why is your voice shaking? Are you unwell? Or do you simply have no idea where to start with this problem? Sorry, Ethan. I'm actually a bit unwell today. I'll explain the solving approach properly tomorrow when I'm better. Having said that, he ignored the whispers and turned to hurry away. Ugh, boring. I pulled the phone I had been recording with from my pocket, pressed stop, then turned the screen toward everyone and raised the volume to maximum. The phone replayed Lucas's earlier hissed words clearly. Your grades will always be mine. I will always be the best of the Johnson family, and you are just trash from the Western wastelands, always and forever worthless. Lucas was startled and tried to grab the phone, but I kicked him down. When the recording finished playing, the corridor fell deathly silent. Every classmate's eyes widened with curiosity. I suppose not everyone here knows what's going on. I played the recording again and continued as it played. You can all see now that Lucas's grades aren't real. How can a true top student not even remember the solving approach for a moment? Moreover, the final problem's difficulty isn't the approach, it's the complex derivation. Lucas used to be consistently mid to low tier. How did he suddenly place in the top 10 every time? I raised the phone higher and said loudly, because Lucas every time stole my grades, and he forced all his results onto me. The crowd erupted. Everyone's gaze shone like spotlights on Lucas. The prior admiration and envy instantly turned into shock, disdain, and a feeling of being deceived. Oh my God, his grades were stolen. Lucas impersonated someone for every exam. That's disgusting. No wonder about the class funds last time. He acted so put together, but he's a total fraud. Lucas slumped on the floor, his face ashen, sweat beading down his forehead, unable to maintain his fake composure. He screamed hysterically, trying to defend himself. No, he forged them. He framed me. I earned my grades myself. Ethan, you're so despicable to accuse me. Don't believe this liar. Ethan's no gentleman at home either, full of lies. Lucas's defense grew more frantic, while the students around pointed and whispered. The noise only grew louder. It was truly deafening that I slapped him hard across the face to shut him up, then rudely hauled him to his feet. Sorry, Lucas. If you won't admit it, we'll just have to pay a visit to the principal's office. I want you to tear down your reputation at Monday's assembly, in front of the whole school. No, I won't go. You deliberately slandered me. I'm calling my parents and having them set this right. He struggled wildly, face twisted, and fumbled for his phone. I let go and kicked him in the gut. Quiet. You've already shamed the Johnson name enough. You can't handle a little trouble without losing your composure. Don't bother calling. I already texted them. You'll see them soon. Lucas curled up on the ground from my kick, clutching his stomach, his face drained of color. The look in his eyes was full of fear and hatred, but he no longer dared shout. Principal Robert Thompson was a vigorous middle-aged man, said to be upright, and was appointed to this school by the provincial leadership. After I presented all the evidence, the atmosphere in the principal's office grew heavy. He called the teachers to inspect all the exam papers of Lucas and me. His brow tightened more and more. With the proof undeniable, he immediately asked the political education office to issue a notice to clear my name and to deal with the teachers involved. Lucas stood to one side, grinding his teeth. Before my parents get here, nobody can convict me. They'll stand up for me. They'll never let you off easily. Enough! The principal slammed the table, speaking sternly. Do you take everyone for blind? Or do you think the Johnson family can cover everything up and make this school theirs to command? Just then, the office door was flung open and Margaret rushed in, gasping for breath. Lucas hurriedly grabbed her hand like clutching at a straw. Mom! Before he could finish, Margaret shoved his hand away, rushed over and grabbed mine. Quick! Come with me. Your father's at a car accident. If we don't hurry, it'll be too late. Her sudden action and the news stunned me. George had a car accident? Was that in the book? Or had the plot changed because of my appearance? In the original story, George's hospitalization happened much later, when they were going to take the male lead's kidney for a transplant. I forcibly kept calm and pulled my hand free. Mom, are you panicking? A car crash. Take him to the hospital to find a doctor. Why come get me? Margaret said anxiously. What are you talking about? The blood bank is in crisis. Your dad has a rare blood type, and only your blood type matches. Come with me now. She reached for me again. I sidestepped, my gaze sliding over to Lucas, who was clearly stunned as well, and I said with a smile, Don't you have Lucas, your precious son? Let him go. Margaret's face instantly turned extremely ugly. She almost screamed, Lucas, he's not even biological. Only you can save your father now. I stood there unmoving. You mean he's not your biological child? I feel like I'm the one who isn't biological. After all, he gets $100,000 a month for living expenses, and I get $300. He wears all designer brands. I shop at street stalls. Even good grades are credited to him. Tell me, who looks more like the biological child? Me or Lucas? Margaret looked embarrassed. Ethan, listen to your mother. Precisely because you are the biological child, we treat you more strictly. Now your biological father is in trouble. As a son, you have to shoulder responsibility. If you go save your father, in the future you'll have everything Lucas has. The principal stepped in to smooth things over. Student Ethan, saving a life is the priority. I snorted and sat down on the sofa, crossing my legs. It's not that I won't save him, but only if you transfer all the assets under your name to me, and publicly announce the true parentage of me and Lucas. My mother almost screamed. Is this really the time to be saying that? He's your biological father. I leaned back leisurely on the principal's leather sofa, lightly tapping the armrest with my fingertips. Mom, look, Dad's life is hanging by a thread. Time is money. Those shares, properties, funds under your name, transfer them sooner so Dad can use my blood sooner. If it's delayed and Dad can't wait. I deliberately lengthened my tone, enjoying Margaret's face going instantly ashen. Margaret trembled with anger, pointing at me with her finger. You cold-blooded thing. That's your real father. Don't want to? Fine, let Dad wait to die then. I stood up, about to walk out. Ethan, Mother called after me. Mom, don't beg him. We'll find other blood sources. We absolutely can't let him succeed. Lucas suddenly blocked Margaret, looking at me with resentful eyes. Margaret lowered her head, as if considering what Lucas had said. I took out my phone and leisurely checked the time. Mom, think it through. A 1 in a million blood type. You go now. The hospital there. I'm afraid we can't wait. In the end, she seemed drained of all strength, collapsing weakly, her voice hoarse. All right, I agree. Father was the pillar of the family. Now that something happened to him, Mother immediately lost her support. In the principal's office, witnessed by everyone, Mother signed a voluntary transfer agreement. Those shares, properties, and funds under her name were all voluntarily transferred to me. She also wrote a statement about her background, sent it to the media, and made Lucas's origins public. I happily left the principal's office first and went to the hospital to give blood. Once Lucas's background was revealed, it instantly caused quite a stir online. Everyone learned that Lucas was the driver's son. Back then, his biological father had switched us, and he enjoyed everything that should have belonged to me. His embezzlement of class funds and falsification of grades were also exposed. The wealthy, perfect gentleman persona he'd built in the circle collapsed with a crash. His reputation was ruined. Wherever he went, people pointed and whispered. Although Chloe still stayed by his side, there was more complexity in her gaze. Now he didn't even dare to leave the house, hiding indoors. Since the transfusion, George's life was essentially saved, but he still hadn't woken up. Margaret was busy caring for George and had no energy to deal with Lucas's matters. In just a week, Lucas looked much paler, haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. No trace of former glamour. Chloe was heartbroken and finally couldn't help but come to me again. She cornered me in a quiet corner behind the school library, her eyes rimmed red. "Ethan, I know you've suffered a lot of grievances, but it's because of your return that Lucas felt panic. He's afraid Uncle and Aunt will abandon him because of you. That's why he did so many wrong things. Look at what he's been driven to now. He doesn't even dare to go out. He's falling apart. I hope you can publicly forgive him. If you publicly forgive him, I'll marry you as soon as I come of age, otherwise." Slap. Before she finished, I slapped her heavily across the face. Chloe turned her head from the blow, a clear handprint quickly appearing on her pale cheek. Chattering nonstop, it's annoying to listen to. "What the hell do you think you are? You dare blackmail me?" She clutched her face, staring in disbelief, tears immediately welling up but stubbornly not falling. "Ethan, you dare to hit me? Get out. Ethan, you bastard." Saying that, Chloe cupped her face and ran off crying. Watching her retreating back, I expressionlessly turned and left. Over the next few days, everything proceeded steadily, as expected. By the time I finished sorting out my assets, the hospital called back. George had woken up. When he found out what had happened that day, he blew up, summoned me to his bedside, demanded I kneel and apologize to Lucas, and even made me publicly forgive Lucas. Lucas sat at the bedside like a mistreated little wife, eyes red. When he looked at me, he looked as if he wanted to eat me alive. I smiled and tucked the blanket around George. "Dad, if you have time to meddle in other people's business, you'd better take care of your health. After all, once you're well, you could be discharged and find a job. Otherwise, you'll just become Mom's burden." George looked puzzled. "What do you mean? You didn't know?" I said cheerfully, "It's nothing really. Mom transferred all the assets under her name to me." George's breathing suddenly quickened. The numbers on the monitor began to jump. He stared at me with wide eyes, his lips trembling, as if he wanted to say something but, weakened and shocked, couldn't form clear words. What did you say?" He finally croaked hoarsely, his chest heaving. Margaret rushed over and patted his back in alarm. "George, what's wrong? I don't have that many assets. Even if I gave everything to Ethan, what's the harm? You're crazy. You're insane. You're ruining this family. You're ruining the company too." George trembled with rage and began coughing violently. I watched the two of them argue and glanced at the helpless Lucas, satisfied. According to the novel, Johnson Group was about to collapse. George had long been pretending while secretly transferring the prime assets into companies under Margaret's name, so secretly that even Margaret didn't know. Johnson Group was in tatters and could fall apart at any moment. In the original plot, after the male lead donated a kidney to George, George feigned gratitude, handed Johnson Group over to the male lead, and the male lead became the scapegoat, forced into debt and death, while the three of them slipped free and lived happily ever after. Chloe got her wish and married Lucas. They ended up together, and nobody cared about the male lead's death. If I hadn't read the book, I might have followed the original protagonist's fate. I said with a smile, "Dad, how could the company be ruined? I'm so capable. If you hand the company to me, you should be relieved." George was so furious at my words, he nearly fainted. The monitor shrieked in alarm. Nurses and doctors rushed in to resuscitate him. Margaret went pale and wailed, "George! George, stay with us!" Lucas stood to the side, looking at me with venom in his eyes, but also a trace of fear. After a flurry of treatment, George's condition stabilized for the moment, but the doctors sternly warned that he needed absolute rest and could not be subjected to any further stress. I stood outside the ward, watching the chaotic scene through the glass with no ripple in my heart. My phone buzzed. It was Lawyer Daniel White. His voice carried a wary excitement. Everything had been taken care of. After that day, I submitted my withdrawal application, packed my bags, and left Lynn City. I sold off all the assets Margaret had transferred into my name. Even the villa they lived in was no longer theirs. The Johnson Group's powder keg was detonated early. In an instant, the three of them were penniless, unable even to pay medical bills. Fortunately, the Bennett family intervened out of old ties and got George discharged safely. George and Margaret tried to make a comeback and went to see the Bennett's patriarch, Benjamin Bennett, but were promptly shown the door and handed $100,000 to send them away. Benjamin Bennett also arranged for Chloe to be sent abroad, cutting off Lucas's hopes. The Johnsons were crammed into a rented room under 50 square meters. Margaret, who had never lifted a finger, was forced to become a housewife and endured George's beatings and abuse daily. Lucas was expelled from school. Because of his prior identity fraud, no school would take him. So he entered the workforce early and, together with George, struggled to find jobs. But none of that was my concern anymore. I was no longer Ethan, I was myself, and I wanted to live the life I wanted, a free life. That day I was partying on a yacht with several beautiful women when a long-absent mechanical voice suddenly rang in my head. "Damn, you really showed off. You even made him enjoy it. I'm sending you back to your original world right now. Let Ethan enjoy his comfortable life." I panicked and blurted, "No, let me enjoy it some more. I just got my pants off." Before I could finish, a wave of dizziness washed over me.